Hello, I would like to tell you a story. Yosef was a 17-year-old son of a prosperous Samaritan tradesman. He and his family considered themselves Israelites and not Jews, for they were the remnant of the 10 lost tribes that were deported from northern Israel during the Assyrian invasion over 700 years before. They were a religious family, believing in Yahweh, and lived according to the law as written in the first 5 books of Moses. They worshipped on the holy mountain Gerizim, where Moses commanded the children of Israel to recommit themselves to the covenant once they entered the land of Israel from their desert wanderings. When the Jews came back from their exile in Babylon, the ancient brotherhood between the northern Samaritan remnant and the southern Jewish remnant was broken forever. Jews worshipped in Jerusalem and in their synagogues, and the Samaritans at Mount Gerizim and in their own synagogues. Yosef was a good-hearted lad of marriageable age. In fact, he was engaged to be married to a pretty young girl that he always secretly admired and hoped that one day would be his wife. Fortunately for him, his father saw the merit of joining the young lady's family with their own on the basis of good social and economic sense. Moreover, Yosef was the heir to the family business, and his prospects could not have been better. One day, however, Yosef's mother, who adored him, saw a sore on his arm. At first, she didn't know what it was and assumed that it would go away. When it didn't go away, and in fact got worse, she became worried, and her worry fell into dreadful despair when she suspected that her son had leprosy. A cloud of gloom fell over their household and over their little community, for everyone loved Yosef and his family, and all the bright prospects for him were dashed. The priest solemnly came to Yosef's door, inspected him, and the dreadful pronouncement was made. According to Mosaic law, those with skin diseases could not live in the community or even worship God in the temple until the disease was cleared up. Now, the law made provisions for the cure of skin diseases, but the diseases described in the law were not leprosy. Leprosy was a relatively recent plague that the law did not address. The diseases described in the law were curable. Leprosy was not. Besides, leprosy was contagious. And so the day came that Yosef, his parents and siblings, packed his bags and set out on a journey's day to the nearest leper colony. Nothing was said as they walked along, and with each step their hearts sunk deeper. As they drew nearer and stood by the entrance of the path that led in, it was as if there was a sign overhead reading like Dante's Hell. All hope abandon ye who entered here. Who could describe the sadness as Yosef went down the path, turning to give his farewell to his parents, broken with grief? Nothing, however, could describe the shock that met him as he entered the colony. What he saw were humans at varying degrees of decomposition. They just stared at him like soulless ghosts as he moved among his new neighbors. If the sight of them was revolting, the stench was horrific. Yosef got sick to his stomach and heaved. This was greeted with a chorus of mocking laughter. By nature, Yosef was a kind and joyful person. His new circumstances, however, served to alter everything. He became bitter and resentful. By and large, he kept to himself, but Survival forced him to gradually integrate into his new society. At times, he would receive a care package from home, but it was expected that he would share it with those who were poor and totally neglected. This meant that he would have to go out and beg for food. This he usually did with others, for they knew where to go and how to do it. He would also have to help build and repair their little stone huts and caves to live in and be protected from the elements. As in all communities, there developed roles in which various people functioned. There was a man who had become the leader. He was a Jew. Yosef found it an interesting thing that leprosy brought together what religion had separated. His name was Yaakov, and he tended to be more expressive with his anger and resentful than others, and at times even violent. Yosef was afraid of Yaakov, but respected his street smarts, especially when it came to getting food, whether by begging or stealing. As for Yaakov, he took a liking to Yosef, even though he was a Samaritan, for he was young and still had strength, and was a help to him in the streets. In a perverse sort of way, survival became an adventure. Often they were found out in their scheming and were driven away with curses and stones. Religion was not practiced much in the colony, for it seemed plain to them that God had abandoned them, so why pay any attention to him? Some were more kind and generous than others, and some still observed various rituals and psalm recitation. But in the main, hopelessness, depression, and the constant and increasing physical pain tended to extinguish any real aspiration toward God. 2 years went by. Yosef's disease was progressing fairly quickly now, and along with it more pain. Many of those who were there when he first arrived had died by now, and other new unfortunate souls were added. Yosef was torn between his natural desire to live and survive and a longing for death to end his misery. Suicide was not uncommon in the colony. The cloud of death and despair was constantly over the place, even on the sunniest days. One day, Yaakov, who was still in pretty good shape, but was showing signs of slowing down, got a group of men together to venture into a nearby village to forage for food. Yosef was among them. As they neared the village, they noticed that there was a large crowd in unusual excitement gathered in the square. They stood afar off, as lepers were expected to do. But from where they were, they learned that Jesus, the great prophet, was there. Now the lepers had heard of this Jesus, as everyone had. It was said that he could work miracles and even heal people of their diseases. The lepers stood there for a moment surveying the scene. The atmosphere was highly charged, and emotions began to stir in their hearts that were strange and new. Suddenly, Yaakov let out a cry that surprised his fellow lepers. It came from the depths of his being, almost involuntarily, as if it jumped out on its own. Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. You see, they had heard Yaakov ask for pity many times before, but it was either out of manipulation or out of despair. They knew him as a spiteful, sarcastic, impious man. What they heard in him now was spontaneous sincerity. With one accord, all 10 lepers joined in with a hopeful cry from the heart, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. The power and passion of their cry was too strong to be ignored. What happened then was something Yosef will never forget. Jesus quietly walked out of the crowd and approached the lepers. and unearthly silence fell over the whole village. Jesus looked at each one of them. His gaze seemed to reach into the depths of each of their souls. They knew instinctively that he knew them. They could not return the gaze for long. But what they did see in Jesus' eyes was authority and gentleness, love and power, the power of earth's creator. After a moment that seemed an eternity, Jesus spoke to them all. All he said was, "Go show yourselves to the priest." Without a word, they obeyed. As they went, they felt their hearts pounding and blood surging through their bodies. Quietly, to themselves, they wondered what they were to tell the priest. At first, they thought that their sores were feeling better. When they looked, that perhaps they were getting smaller. But they did not speak out, however, because they thought they were imagining it. As they walked along, they could not help but examine themselves. It soon became obvious that their leprosy was disappearing. They began to look at one another in amazement. What was a motley crew of hopeless lepers was now a jubilant band of healthy men slapping each other on the back, jumping up and down and screaming with joy and delight. It was like waking up from a nightmare, and with great relief realizing that it was only a bad dream. With haste, they began to run to the place they knew would have priest. As they ran, however, the image of Jesus' eye filled Yosef's soul. Something did not seem right running away from Jesus. He began to feel an intense desire to connect with Jesus, to thank him, to touch him. He began to slow up as the others ran on. He stopped on the road, debated whether to go on with the others or return to the village. He obeyed the urgings of his heart. He went to Jesus. He ran as fast as he could. When he got to the village, he burst through the crowd and fell at Jesus' feet, worshiping and praising God and thanking Jesus for healing him. Even though the area they were in was predominantly Samaritan, there were many Jews following him that day. Jesus saw by Yosef's dress, as ragged and filthy as it was, that he was a Samaritan. He turned to the Jews and asked, "Were there not 10 cleansed? But where are the 9? Were there not any found to return to give glory to God except this foreigner?" Yosef did not hear most of this, for he was still in ecstasy and praise. The fact that Jesus was a Jew and he was a Samaritan was not even an issue with him. All he knew was that Jesus healed him and that Jesus owned him. What happened next seemed at the moment to be of less consequence than his healing, but proved to be far more important. Jesus turned to him and gently said, "Arise, go your way. Your faith has made you whole." With these words, an inner healing came to Yosef. He knew that all his sins of bitterness, hatred, and crimes against others and God were forgiven. Yosef quietly stepped away from Jesus, a totally new man. When Jesus went on, he thoughtfully turned and slowly made his way to the priest. You could imagine the shock and happiness of Yosef's family when he suddenly appeared at their door, healed and whole, body and soul. He did not speak much of the leper colony. How could words describe the sorrow he experienced there? He did, however, speak much of Jesus and how he changed his life.